guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca and I am a stay-at-home mom to an almost 4-year-old and to an 18-month-old. When you see this video, my oldest will actually be almost 4. He'll be 4, I think 2 days after you see this video. You saw the title. It is my birth story for him. He's my oldest and his birthday's coming up for 4 years. I did not have YouTube. I didn't have a YouTube channel. Of course I had YouTube back when I was pregnant with him and when he was born. I just started my YouTube channel this year in 2022. Is that the year we're in? He was born in 2018. If you're new to this channel, then nothing may look amiss to you, but if you're not new, you'll notice I don't have glasses on, and I'll be honest, I am mostly blind right now, but this is a sit-down video. I don't have like a good natural light area. I'm not walking around vlogging or anything, so I'm sitting down with my ring light, and if I put my glasses on, you guys will just be looking at this ring the whole time. So I don't really need my glasses right now. I just need to be able to see my phone, which is what I'm recording on. So anyway, that's why I look a little bit different. If you've been here before, I do not have contact lenses or anything in. I'm just going through this blind, so it'll be a good time. I wanted to do this birth story kind of video, even though it's been 4 years, because I really enjoyed watching these when I was pregnant with both of my kids. It's just kind of fun and interesting to hear how different people's births have gone and their pregnancies and all that. And to kind of get an idea for like, I don't want to say exactly what yours is going to be like because everyone's is different, but it is kind of nice, I guess, just to see like the options or the possibilities of different outcomes. So I've always thought it would be cool to sit down and do this, and I'm just finally taking the time to do it now. Before I get into this story, I would just like you to think about hitting the like button, maybe just like a little tap if you enjoy this video, and subscribe if you want to come back for more mom life content. I'm also a reseller online, kind of part-time while I stay home with my kids. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, I do a little bit of that. Lots of thrifting, cleaning the house, day in the life kind of stuff. You can check all of that out on my channel. And if you hit the bell notification, it'll let you know when I post a new video, which right now should be every Wednesday, barring any technical issues like I've had in the past. But every Wednesday, I should be uploading a new video. With all that said, let's hop into today's topic. We're going to start back in my pregnancy, getting pregnant with him. My son's name is Caius. It is spelled K-A-I-U-S. I can't tell you exactly where that comes from. You know, it's one of those things, I found it on the internet. It was originally spelled with a C, and I believe it's pronounced Caius. I found it, I think it's like from like Roman etymology, it's Latin. Can't remember exactly what it stands for. It was something cool. I think I'll put it on the screen if I remember to look it up. I kind of just want to spell it with a K, and I kind of like spelling it or pronouncing it Caius, and then if he ever wanted to have the short nickname of Kai, he could have that, which is what our youngest calls him. And we call him that sometimes too, but usually we stick with Caius. So I ended up getting pregnant with Caius in January of 2018. It was a planned pregnancy. My husband and I had been married for, I guess, about 1.5 years at that point. We knew we always wanted kids. We luckily got pregnant right away. I know that's not the case with everybody. It is just happens to be the case with us. Pregnancy was pretty good. I didn't have any major issues or anything. Being that I didn't have any kids at that time, I was able to stay pretty active. I'm pretty sure I walk like 3 miles a day, like 2 or 3 days a week. I was like a stay-at-home wife basically because we had just moved, like changing states and changing houses. The job that I was in, which was being an EMT, it's a pretty physically demanding job. And it does come with some risks as far as, you know, not everyone's happy when they're around EMS, whether it's on purpose or whether it's due to a medical condition. People come swinging sometimes, kicking, screaming, all those things. We didn't really want to risk that with me being pregnant. And luckily, once again, we didn't really have to. My husband did get a pretty good job. So we kind of just decided I would stay home, given that we knew I'd be staying home once he was here anyway. So pregnancy was all well and fine. We were living in New Jersey at the time. We are originally from and back living in Pennsylvania, which was always our goal to come back here. But at the time, my husband's job took him to New Jersey, so that's where we went. We ended up only living in New Jersey for just under 1.5 years. But everything out there was new, so I had to find doctors. I thought about going with like a birth center because I really like that idea, but there weren't any particularly close to us. We weren't comfortable with a home birth just in case there was a medical emergency. We lived like 30 minutes from the hospital where our house was, and we couldn't find any birth centers that were in a comfortable distance for us that were also close enough to a hospital for it to be comfortable for us if we would need that. So we did not go that route. The OB practice that I ended up going with was like an OB midwife mixture. But as is the case with many OB practices, there are several OBs or midwives in the practice, and in this one, they did want you to like see all of them during your pregnancy, so you at least knew them a little bit. There was one doctor who was actually like the head OB there. I did not like her. I saw her one time. She was physically kind of just rough during exams, not what you want from an OB. I did actually request to not see her for any more of my pregnancy. And I just scheduled with other midwives and everything, and it was fine. So his due date was October 3rd of 2018. As things started getting closer, I was starting to get nervous about hearing so many people going past their due date and needing to get induced. And I was really aiming to have unmedicated or natural, depending on what term you want to use. That's the kind of birth I was planning. I wanted to do it very holistically, I guess would be the best term. So I watched a lot of videos, read a lot about that. I was just getting concerned about like, well, if I go over and have to get induced, I hear it's really hard for people to manage the pain of an induction. I was getting nervous about it, and I was kind of like, what are ways I can make sure my baby's not late? So I started looking into things and discussed them with my OBs and midwives. One of the options I'd seen and heard about was acupuncture-induced labor. I did discuss, I think it was brought up to me by my chiropractor because they also did acupuncture there. I only did it one time, and I decided I was going to do it just a couple of days before his due date. And everyone was basically like, you can try it. If it doesn't work, your baby's not going to come anyway. It's not going to put you into labor if your body's not ready for it. So I was like, okay, what do I have to lose, basically? So on September 29th, just a couple days before my due date, I decided to go in the morning. It was like 11 a.m., I think. I decided to go do this labor-inducing acupuncture. It was an interesting experience. It wasn't particularly painful, but it was just weird. The people at the office had told me that if it does work, most women have had their baby within 24 hours of it happening. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I think my appointment was over around noon that day. Me and my husband were going to it's like a 30-minute drive to my cousin's house to pick up some baby items that they happened to just be like, hey, we're getting rid of some stuff if you want it. We're like, okay. On the way to their house, I was like, I don't know if I'm having contractions. Up to this point, I didn't really have Braxton Hicks ever. I only had some kind of contractions or cramping when I was doing my walking. If it was really hot or I was pushing my speed, I was kind of doing speed walking as best I could. But I didn't have what I would really call Braxton Hicks any other time. So I started feeling these cramping, contraction-y kind of feelings on the way to their house. I didn't say anything to my husband because I was like, I don't know what it is. Probably nothing. It's hard to tell sometimes, especially when you're a first-time mom and you've never had contractions before. You're like, I don't really know what it's supposed to feel like. So we went to their house, we were talking to them, and while we were standing in their kitchen and stuff talking to them, I just kept having those feelings. It still kept feeling like I was kind of having contractions, but they were still very, very mild. I felt like I was feeling them more often. We weren't there very long, maybe 30 minutes to an hour. We're driving back home, and I started talking to my husband. I was like, I might be having contractions. I'm not sure. My pregnancy app I was using, Ovia, had a contraction timer in it. So I started timing them on the way home. They were getting closer together. They were probably that 7 minutes apart, maybe something like that. We got home. I just kept timing them throughout the afternoon into the evening. And they started getting a little bit more intense. And, I'm trying to remember all the things that doctors tell you and everything you read about. You want to make sure they're so far apart and happening so often, and they should be a certain intensity before you, especially as a first-time mom, before you even try to go to the hospital. Because, like I said, we were 30 minutes from the hospital. The last thing I wanted was to get there and then just send us home and us have to drive 30 minutes back and then have to drive 30 minutes again. And then, I just didn't want to mess with that. I want this to be pretty for sure before we do anything. So we continued on with our evening, ate dinner and everything. I felt like they were starting to get more and more intense. And at this point, my husband's like, okay, well, I'm going to go take a nap. in case this is the real thing. I'm pretty sure I was like crocheting a blanket for my niece. Remember, this was 4 years ago. I didn't write this down, so all this is coming just from memory. I'm sure I was doing something like that, maybe watching TV, probably sitting on a yoga ball. They started getting to the point where they weren't crazy severe, but they were getting to the point where I was like, I feel like I need to stop, put a hand on like a table or something and just kind of breathe a little bit. And I was like, I feel like at this point, they were also getting closer together. They were at that like 4 to 5 minutes apart. So I was like, I feel like I should call my OB. At this point, it had been going on for a while. I think it was like 11 p.m. at this point. I wake up my husband. I'm like, hey, I'm going to call them. I think he was like crashing on the couch. I talked to them and I was like, I think I'm in labor. I think this is what's going on. Here's how long it's been going on, how far apart they are. Of course, the OB who answers is that one OB I didn't like in the office, right? I'm talking to her and she goes, well, you don't sound like you're in labor. Excuse me? I'm sorry. I don't really know what the correct response to that was. Do you want me to scream at you through the phone? I feel like that was just so incredibly rude. First off, rude, unprofessional. Like, I don't know who says that to someone. Of course, I was still in between contractions a lot of the time when I was talking to her. So I wasn't thrilled about having to talk to her, but she's like, well, you can come in if you want. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I think I'm going to come in. I went to get a shower. I wanted to shower and everything because I was like, I know that like I wanted to shower and shave and all those things that I figured I wouldn't be doing for a little while. I wanted to feel nice and clean and refreshed before I went in, and I knew I assumed that this was being my first kid, I would have a little bit of time to do that. So I did that, I got showered, finished packing up my hospital bag, woke up my husband. I think I probably ate something before I went, knowing that I wouldn't be allowed to eat while I was there. And we headed to the hospital. Contractions were definitely speeding up by that point. And we get to the hospital and we get checked in. It's like right about midnight. And when we get back to the room, they do the whole triage thing where they check to see how far along you are, monitor all those things, take your weight and everything like that. So we do all of those things and they're like, okay, you're like a centimeter dilated. I'm like, okay. So that was pretty much nothing to them, I guess. To me, I was like, all right. I was kind of hoping I'd come in here like 3 or 4 centimeters dilated, like a lot of the stories I've read, but that's fine. Okay. They were like, well, we talked to your OB, which of course was the lovely one I talked to on the phone. And they're like, you basically have 2 options. You can go home. And immediately I was like, no, thank you. Or they said, we can admit you. They're like, how about they basically wanted me to walk around for like an hour, see if anything happens in the next hour. So that's what we did. We walked the halls and contractions were definitely getting worse. I would have to stop and breathe through them whenever they were happening. I definitely could not walk through them. When I went back an hour later, they checked me again. I was 2 centimeters. So they're like, okay, you had some progression. So if you want to get admitted, we can admit you. I was like, yes, please. I'd like to be here when my baby is born, not sit in another uncomfortable ride for 30 minutes home and then another 30 minutes back. I didn't want to do that. We got admitted and they were like, do you want us to roll you up like in a wheelchair up to the ward? And I was like, no, I can walk. I just, might need to stop during the contractions. I wanted to just keep moving as much as possible. So we got up to the maternity ward into the delivery room. I had to sit down on the bed and they were doing all the intake information, I guess. The nurse was on the computer and asking me all the questions and everything. One of the things was that my water had not broken yet. And I said to her, so, when my water breaks, like, should I let you guys know or just kind of go about my business? What do you want me to do? And she's like, yeah, you can let us know. I was like, okay. At this point, I'm in full hospital garb. I have the gown on. I have the big old undies on, with all the pads and stuff. Not fully stacked like you do postpartum, but still. She walks out of the room and the next thing I want to do is I'm like, hey, I had to go to the bathroom. So I stand up from the bed and then I sit back down and my husband's like, are you going to go to the bathroom or what? And I'm like, I think my water just broke. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what just happened. We went to the bathroom. My husband got the nurse and they checked and they were pretty much like, yeah, your water broke. I'm like, okay. Things really took off at that point. I started having a lot more contractions, a lot of intense contractions. I just labored like that. Mostly I was standing and swaying, holding onto my husband, just swaying back and forth. I tried the yoga ball, hated it. Tried just getting into different positions. Nothing was happening. Nothing was working. And it was getting like really severe at this point. Like, I was really struggling. I think they checked me again maybe, and they're like, yeah, you're like 3 or 4 centimeters. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was hoping I was like 8. So I was really having a hard time coping with the contractions. It is a pain that like you can't prepare for. I feel like there's not like, I mean, you don't typically have those kinds of pains down there. So I did all these different things to try to help it. And the nurses were kind and they were somewhat involved. But this hospital that we were at was a big hospital. It was quite large. It was a very nice facility. It was a newer facility. You know, I wasn't the only one there having a baby. They weren't there as much as I was hoping they would have been, but you know, I filled out all the like, you know, I don't want these things and this and this and this. I did my, what do you call it? A birth plan. I did the visual birth plan and all that. Yeah, I wasn't coping well, and I felt like such a failure at that point because I was like, I want this to be unmedicated. And at this point, I'm like, I just feel like I can't even catch my breath between contractions. They were coming pretty quickly, and I'm sure I was fighting it and just couldn't relax to let them do their job, which is probably why I wasn't progressing as much. Kind of going back into that, like, I guess like childish instinct almost. I said to my husband, I was like, I need to call my mom. So we called my mom and I'm crying and stuff. And it was... So my parents were living in Pennsylvania, so they weren't there. They knew that I was at the hospital having a baby, but they were going to be coming out later. And, you know, I was just calling her and I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't do this. I'm hurting. I'm like, I want an epidural, but I don't want an epidural, but I want to be out of this pain. That was the only pain med option that I was really given. They did not have nitrous oxide at that hospital, and I don't even know if they would do like Stadol. They didn't even discuss that with me really. So I'm talking to my mom, and she was basically like, it's okay to get an epidural, you know, it's okay. And that's kind of all I needed was like my mom to be like, it's okay. It sounds so childish and silly, but like when you're in pain, that's kind of where you go. I feel like you go to what you did as a child, what comforted you. At least for me, that's how I kind of handle pain, I feel like. I called my mommy. She told me it was okay. And I said, all right, fine, let's get the epidural. So of course, you know, it's not like, hey, I want an epidural. And they're like, okay, here's the anesthesiologist, let's do it. No, you know, like, okay, well, he's with someone else. Well, hopefully like 45 minutes from now. And at that point, you're just like, oh, I have to go through this for like another hour before someone's going to come help me. But that's the way it was. And that's the way it is most of the time. It's just, you know, when you're in that position, you want to be number one on someone's list. The anesthesiologist eventually got there. I mean, here's the hard part. They're trying to shove a needle in your back and you're still having contractions, very painful contractions. And usually for contractions, the only way to help relieve some of that pain is some sort of movement. And now they're like, okay, sit very still. It's so hard. It is so hard. And the nurse was great with me, but it was very, very, very hard to just to stay still during that. Got the epidural. Luckily, it worked great. It worked immediately. They had to put the catheter in and all that, which you don't feel at all because you're numbed. That's the whole point. This was not like a walking epidural, so I was bedridden at that point, can't get up. My legs did not work. I just kind of kept laboring that way. They wanted me to take a nap. Once again, I'm like, I'm about to have a baby. I can't nap at a time like this. My husband, of course, went back to sleep on the couch in the room because he's a guy and I guess they can do that. Way back when we checked into the hospital, I asked them, I said, who's on duty tonight? Like, who's here to deliver my baby? And they said it was the same doctor, of course, that I would talk to on the phone, that I had the bad experience with at the office. It was her. And I was like, oh. I was like, and when does she come off shift? Thinking maybe she'll go off shift and someone else will come on before this baby's born. No, they said that she was going to be the only one on for the next 2 days because it was a weekend. And I was like, okay. Alrighty then. I guess that's who we're going to have then. Every hospital and every practice is different. So at this hospital with this OB practice and with the amount of pregnant women they have coming in, the amount of patients they have, you know, they're not very there with you. It's mostly the nurses. The nurses are the ones that are taking care of you essentially. So she'd pop in every now and then, see how I'm doing. I'm sure she was checking in with the nurses on the outside to see how far along I was and all that. She came in at one point and said, okay, you're however far along. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 maybe centimeters at that point. And she was like, okay, I'm going to go do a C-section and then I'll come back around whatever time and we'll have your baby. And I was like, okay, all right. I think it was like she said around noon. So I think I ended up laboring from around midnight at the hospital, around midnight to like 7 a.m. Around 7 a.m. I ended up getting the epidural. Yeah, so we get close to noon. I think it's like starting to be like 11:30. I remember looking at the clock and it being around 11:30, and they give you a push button for the epidural. That's how you release the medication. It's not just like a constant flow of medication. You have, at least in my case, you had a button that would release it. And then, if you felt like you can kind of let it go, and if you start feeling really uncomfortable again, you can hit it again, and then you kind of take some of the pain away. So it's getting close to, that time when she said we were going to start pushing. It's about 11:30 now. And I just remember everyone saying, oh, like, wow, pushing hurts, which obviously is having a baby. Yeah, it's going to hurt. So my thought is, I don't want to feel pushing a baby out of me. That's going to hurt a lot. I don't want to hurt a lot. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep pushing this button as often as I can. It would basically have like a light on it, and you could only push it every however often. So when that light would light up again, you knew that you were basically able to push it again to get more of the medication. I was so button happy at that point. Every time it turned green, I was like, I'm going to hit it because I want as much of this pain numbing medication as possible so I don't feel myself pushing a baby out. So that was a horrible decision in retrospect. And there was no one there telling me not to. No one told me, like no one warned me to not do that. I guess they just assumed I wouldn't. It gets to about noon. She comes back and she checks me and she's like, okay, you're 10 centimeters. We're good to start pushing. Like, sweet. Pop this baby out soon. So they do some like practice pushing to see how good of a pusher you are, essentially. They thought I was a pretty good pusher, so this wouldn't take very long. I started pushing. I'm not feeling any of it, right? I can't even feel my legs enough to hold them up on this, like the stirrups. I can't, like my husband has to hold a leg and a nurse has to hold a leg, or I'm trying to help hold my legs with my arms, but I can't even feel my own legs. Because that's what the epidural is supposed to do. I'm trying to push this baby out and it's just not working. They're like, his head just keeps getting stuck. And then they're like, oh, he's sunny side up. When a baby comes out, if you're laying on your back birthing, that baby's face is supposed to be facing the ground. So when they say, oh, they're sunny side up, that means he was flipped. His face was facing upwards. That's not an ideal presentation. It's harder to give birth that way because of the way the pelvis is shaped and everything, and then the baby's head. That was the first kind of like, oh no. And then they were like, oh, he's turning. Let's just give a couple more pushes. It seems like maybe he's turning himself, so he'll come down, come out the right way. Well, he never really fully turned. Every time I was pushing, his head was basically getting like slammed on my bones, and it was hurting my pelvic bones, and I was starting to feel it. And at this point, I'm like, why am I feeling this? Like, I have a heck of a lot of epidural. The doctor's there and she's trying to stretch everything out to try to help it. And I'm starting to feel that. And I'm like, she can't even barely touch me at all. It hurts so bad. And they were like, oh, your epidural's empty. Why is your epidural empty? And I'm like, I guess because I used it all because I'm pushing out a baby and no one told me not to. Then we have to wait again. They come refill the epidural medication. I just keep pushing and he's not coming out. He just keeps getting stuck. They basically were telling me that. They're like, you can keep pushing, but it's not going to do anything. And then once again, this is that OB that I did not like. This was her explanation to me, is you can keep pushing, but it's not going to do anything. Once again, rude, but also like, okay, then what do we do? So then she said, we need to do an episiotomy. If you're not familiar with an episiotomy, that is where they actually cut the vaginal opening. So the hole is bigger essentially to let the baby out. That was of course on my sheet of heck no, I don't want an episiotomy, because I wanted to have a natural birth. I wanted to have an unmedicated birth. We're already past that point. At this point, I'm like, just get this baby out healthily, and me being healthy. We wanted just two healthy people at the end of this. Got the episiotomy, which also requires getting a lidocaine shot down there, which should not hurt if you have enough of the epidural. So I had to wait for more epidural medication to get the lidocaine shot so they could do that. He was able to be born very quickly after that incision was made. He came out fine. He was never stressed at all during any of this. We never had like any heart decelerations or any kind of stress on him, luckily. So there was never talk, at least to me, maybe probably amongst themselves, but there was never talk to me about like we might need to have a C-section or anything like that, which I was very grateful for. They had to stitch up the episiotomy and I had some tears as well. Honestly, it was a traumatic birth experience. Even though we both ended up fine, nothing went the way I wanted it to. I had a lot of issues with this whole birth because I felt like a failure because I couldn't give birth without medication. Feels like a really sad way to end this birth story, but overall, I mean, 4 years ago, I had my first baby and there have been struggles, but he is healthy and he is fun. He is full of energy. He's full of sass, even for a boy. I'm thankful for the health that we do have. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below or just let me know if you've had a similar story. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you guys in the next one.